We have made our way to Radlett in Hertfordshire, a large village sitting astride the Roman Watling Street. In the 1930s there were a number of large mansions set in parklands. One was used as a hotel, Alderman Lodge, which was the first to be requisitioned by the Royal Air Force as the headquarters for the new 80-wing signals unit. More space was needed, and this grand mansion, Newbury's, was commandeered. 80-wing set up its control room behind the bow window on this end of the building. And here is a diagram of that control room, the nerve centre of the operation. Large numbers of staff would have been needed to maintain round-the-clock operation. There can be little doubt that off-duty 80-wing staff would have spent some time in this Radlett hostelry. We will go inside and meet Radlett's own local historian, Philip Eastburn. It's very nice to meet you, Philip, in your hometown.
Village. We like to call it a village.
This is Radlett, isn't it?
This is Radlett.
Now, can you tell us the place we're in?
This is the Cat and Fiddle. It's a local hostelry, looked after by Dom, our genial landlord, and almost certainly this pub would have been used by RAF personnel back in the 1940s.
So the beam benders would have come in here.
They would indeed. Well, indeed. I mean, nobody knew anything about what was going on until 1990s. There were RAF personnel around in Radlett, of course, hundreds of them. But nobody knew why they were here specifically. But there was a war on. Things were different. And there is an RAF station, well there was, about 5 miles down the road at Stanmore, so why not have RAF people here as well?
Now, we've just been inside the Cat and the Fiddle, and you've explained to us the significance of that place. Now we've come out into their really nice garden.
Lovely day, isn't it?
And we'd just like to get people who are watching this film to understand who you are, Phil.
Oh, all right. My name is Philip Eastburn. People call me a local historian. I'm very interested in the history of the village. I was born here a long time ago. And back in the early 1990s, I found myself out of work. Banks were shedding staff as quickly as they could then, and to fill in some time between jobs searching, I was in the local library, found one or two interesting books about the local community, local area, and through that developed an interest in local history, which has become my almost full-time passion since.
I understand what you said earlier, that you are the database of the area.
I do have a database. I collect names from Kelly's directories, census returns, electoral rolls, all sorts of places like that. Put them in my database, and then if a name is mentioned, I can look it up and find out something about them. Oh. It's all for personal interest, but pleased if anybody else has an interest in it as well.
Now, how did you get to know anything at all about 80-wing, RAF 80-wing?
80-wing itself, I knew nothing about until Laurie Brettingham's book came out.
That's this book here?
That's this book here, that's right. I was already into local history by that stage, and Laurie came down to Radlett for a book signing. So I went along to it and met him and spoke to him, explained I was a local historian. And I spent a bit of time with him, and he was telling me all the research that he'd done to find out about his book. And of course he was telling me stuff that was absolutely unknown to me. I was born in Radlett, as I said, and brought up here. My father was an air raid warden, because he was too old to be a serving officer. And I recall that after the war I must have asked some questions at some stage about the RAF and what had happened in the village. And he said that as far as he knew, the old mansion at Newbury's had been used as a convalescent home for injured pilots.
Convalescent home for injured pilots?
That's right, yes. I mean, that's why there were so many RAF personnel here. And it sounded good to me, so for 60 years I believed him.
So what changed then now?
Well, obviously, Laurie brought out all this information, and since then I've been asking people a little bit, and because people know me as a local historian, sometimes they'll phone me, as did the gentleman, Dr. Simanowitz. He said, "Did you know I've got an Anderson shelter in my garden?" I said, "No, I'd love to look at it." So I went up there, and he told me that the house he now lived in had been used during the 40s as a minor injuries unit for the Air Force, and there was a 42-seater Anderson shelter in his garden. 42 seats. It's still there. It's got electric light and water in it. I don't know whether that was there in 1940, but there it is. And little bits of information like that come my way because people know I'm interested.
Now, the other thing you told us was that you do get involved with the schools.
I do indeed.
What sort of things do you do in the school?
Well, the local schools, a number of them, seem to have, from time to time, a part of their program of learning about the district, local knowledge. And they asked me to go and give them a talk about Radlett's role during World War II, which I'm very pleased to do. And of course, none of the children have got any knowledge of what Radlett did in the war, as neither have their teachers most of the time. But what is very interesting, that the first thing I have to tell these kids is to forget all their modern equipment, all their iPhones and iPads and pods, because I've got to talk to them about communication. Even telephones in those days, I say, were difficult. The best way, if you wanted to get a message to somebody else, was to send them a postcard. They find that difficult to believe.
But you did mention about this other top secret thing going on in Radlett.
Oh, of course, I tell them all about it, but that's why I need to tell them about the communications, because the RAF beam benders were reliant on the telephone, and of course the telephone number for Aldenham Lodge and Newbury's was London 12, and all the operators up and down the country were instructed to put a call through to that number when requested, regardless of who they had to cut off to do it.
Now that's interesting, that's really interesting. Now these two mansions were requisitioned during the war.
They were.
But what's happened to them now?
Well, unfortunately, as happened to so many of our beautiful old country houses, they got pulled down. Houses were built on their sites. Newbury's was the first to go. It was described in one of the history books of earlier this century, last century, pardon me, as the finest country gentleman's house in Hertfordshire. I don't know, it certainly looks very nice from the outside. That was pulled down in about the 1953, 1954. Aldenham Lodge, which was a hotel, managed to last another 10 years and was finally pulled down in the 1960s, and houses built on the site. Aldenham Lodge was my favourite, partly because I knew it better, but partly because it had an outdoor swimming pool and a riding stables. So I spent most of my formative years there.
But now it's all housing.
All
It's
housing.
not like some places like Bentley Priory, which have now been reconstituted how they were
That's right.
in the war.
Fortunately, places like Bentley Priory, they were not sold off somehow or other. They managed to avoid the developer's eye and have been, as you say, made into the places that they were, living museums perhaps.
So the only way we can tell what was in that control room is not by going to see one, but by seeing the drawings in Laurie Brettingham's book.
That's right, and there aren't many people left alive now who will be able to remember them, I wouldn't think. So we've got to rely on the memories of people who have put them down in print. There's nothing left to see in Radlett, unfortunately.
Well, it's very kind of you to come and talk to us.
That's my pleasure.
Philip, and we've enjoyed very much your company, and we hope you have a good day.
Thank you very much indeed.